Jim, are you there?
Hey, brother.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well, man. Your space looks great.
Thank you, man. It's coming on. I just finished building. Well, finished. We're building massive gobos at the minute, like massive, like 8 foot by 5 foot gobos, and they're fucking killing me, man. They're killing me. Everything else we've done has been fine. You know, the rooms and the soundproofing and the sound design and everything has just been killer. But these fucking boards, they're trying to kill me. I don't know what it is. So they're just everything's going wrong with them. So everything.
What's the problem? Are you trying to bend them, or is it?
No, it's the size of them is a problem because they're so big. The plates at the bottom have to be quite big, but I don't want that because then I can't get it around a kit and I can't get to like that. So what ended up being a really simple kind of wood frame is now like, you know, Mecha Godzilla. It's just it's mad how much steel is inside there. And I can't weld for shit. So don't worry, I won't swear this much in a minute. But
No. I swear away, and we're going to include it. It's great.
All right, I have a potty mouth and I can't help it.
I do as well, so.
Yeah. But anyway, they're going to be great. But just everything has just been fucking hard with it, man. Everything. So it's fine. We've got a guy that works with us, you know, for us. And you must know these people. He's just good at everything. Yep. Like fucking everything. Like he can weld, or if you give him a computer game, you spent the last 20 years playing, he's better than you. He'll catch a ball better than you, run faster. He's just he's just walked in and just solved it all today. So my masculinity's just dropped, but hey, they're standing up now, so that's cool.
On that note, we actually have one of those in our lives here at the studio. His name is Justin Valentine. He's our studio manager, and he is better than me at everything.
You've got to have him. You've got to have him, man.
And it's one of those things where, like, you know, he can't mix a record, so I got that going. But, you know, he's just like any video game. I remember I bought this Dragon Ball Z video game, spent like $60 on it. He was instantly whooping my ass, and I never played it again. But I finally figured one out, which is the old school Snake game from Nokia phones.
Yeah.
I'm better than him.
Ah, you see, when you find it.
Twice as good. And it's like in a score. It's like easily readable. I'm very proud of that. It's just come to light.
That's nice. You can hold that over him now. You can hold it over him.
I feel good. I feel good knowing that, you know.
I mean, this guy, he's called Rafe Spencer, and he's one of those incredible people that has had such an amazing life up to now. You know, You'll talk to him about, you know, such and such mountain. He's like, oh, actually, when I was riding up that mountain on my motorbike, you know, and he's just done all these things, but he'll never tell you. He will never tell you. He's just had an incredible life, and he's ended up being our luthier. Basically, we put in our new building, we've got extra buildings at the front, and we've given him this space to be a luthier there. So he's just fixing all these beautiful guitars and things all the time. But what's amazing for us is that he's 10, 15 foot out the front of the studio. So when every session comes in and every indie band has got a really jangly Telecaster that won't stay in, or the intonation's fucked on this, I just pick it up, walk it to Rafe, and I'm back in 5 minutes later. It is literally one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. I fucking love it. Every guitar we have in here is just perfect because he's right there. And like, I just walk them out. Something's given me even like the littlest bit of hassle. I just walk them to Rafe and he sorts it, you know? Anyway, this is like a Rafe appreciation show, but hey, he's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
No, that's amazing, man. So tell us, you know, about your new spot. You recently moved, and this is a pretty much ground up build, correct?
Yeah, well, so we were in our last place for nearly 20 years, like 19 years, I think. We had a band many years ago, and the band it was like our headquarters, if you like. And then we took it on as a studio, and we moved coming up to 16 months ago, I think now. Now, what we did is we took it over from a friend of ours that had started to build a studio, and then he got a great engineering gig up in London. So he just was like, look, this is too much of an opportunity. I'm going to go. What should I do with the building? I was like, wow, do you know what? We'll take it, man. We'll take it on. So a lot of the structural stuff was done. All the walls were built. The doors were on. He'd done it in a sort of style that wasn't what we would want. So we kind of took a lot of stuff apart and rebuilt it. But for the main part, he'd done the hard stuff and he'd done it well. So the soundproofing, is killer and things like that. It's just that some of the sounds of the rooms weren't great. And so you can see behind me here, see where the big where the big outtake is. There was kind of 45s on there, but they weren't filled. So they were in effect big snare drums either side. And there's just things like that we had to rip out. And when we took that out, it turned out there was no ceiling, wall or floor behind it. So then you have to build that. And what's meant to be a day ends up being a week. And that's the story of this whole build, really. Everything being slow. But it's a good spot. Before we were on 2 floors, which is good in some ways, but, let's say a bass player pulls his DI out. I had to go down the stairs and then back up the stairs, and I couldn't look. We had cameras, but it's not the same. So this is all at one floor now, and I can see straight through. And I suppose the sexiest thing about it is we just got to do whatever we wanted. Before we had limitations, our last studio was owned by the Queen of England, RIP, and she was a bit of a troublesome landlady because you couldn't do anything. The floor had to be a certain red, the outside door had to be a certain green, and it was all hard. But in here, we've been able to go, right, okay, we've had that last space 20 years. What do we want? What do we actually want in a studio? So it was an amazing process because we got to design the rooms how we wanted, lose some of the equipment we had for 15 years and didn't use. Same with guitars and instruments. So we just kind of almost wrote like a master list of, right, what do I need to make a record? And we started with that, and it's maybe 10 items. And then we let a few other things in, and then we've just got rid of them. So as I'm sat here now, we can see, look how small our desk is. It's tiny, really, really small. And then we've got a rack of outboard here. But apart from that, there's not a lot of stuff. And, Rick, it's been so cool. It's been so cool to just not have too many options, I suppose. You know that thing, one of my pet hates is when producers sit and go through snare samples for an hour and a half, and they can't find one. And actually probably the second one was fine and is great. By taking out all of these options that we had, I swear we're just making better decisions, quicker decisions, and our work, I think, touch wood, is better for it. I feel like we made a good move, and I'm never actually happy because I'm English, but I'm 80% towards being happy, which is great, man. Really cool.
That's amazing to hear, man. I'm really happy that things are going well for you. You and I have had almost a 10-year friendship now where we've discussed getting rid of things like this.
Yes.
And I've watched you commit to that a lot more than I have. I've actually acquired more of them last time we talked about it. So, it's very interesting because, for me, a recording console is still how I would prefer to make a record. And when I'm at my own place, that is how I'm making a record. And, but it's little things like being able to solo while they're tracking through the solo bus and stuff like that I feel like I'd be really, really miss. Do you miss anything at all with the new workflow that you've adopted?
I do. I miss a lot, is the truth. But I suppose what I should quantify that we didn't come from tape necessarily. We had, I think Rob and I started on like Cubase something, and we had a Mackie desk and, 24-channel Mackie desk or something like that. And when we were making our personal first record, we went over to Radar V, I think it was at the time, whenever Nyquist had just come out. So we had that. And we had 48 channels of that. And I remember the guy that sold it to us came down and saw that we had, at the time it was probably 12 grams worth of Radar or something. And we were recording onto that. And then we were just bottlenecking it into a Mackie desk. And he was disgusted, absolutely disgusted at us. And he sold us a big format console. And we made records like that, 48 channels with Radar and a console for probably a decade, I think. We would, as we got busier, we would limit half of the desk. So we would say, right, this half, this 24 is that track. This half is that track, because we very rarely go over 24 tracks. And that was actually kind of cool, because we'd always have two things on the go. But the things I miss the most about not having a console is I find it much easier to get a cohesive sound on a console, because I'm running everything through the same, the same thing, the same topology. And also, like you say, it's the silly things. It's throwing up a drum mix, with my hands, and being able to solo and being able to just pump different things through. And we had I won't slag it off, but a console that I didn't really like very much, which is made by Audient, which is fine. It's a fine console, but it's got no vibe, no soul, no nothing to it. But what it did have is it had a really excellent little matrix at the top. So beyond your EQ, there's a little, and you could send stuff everywhere. So it negated, in effect, the need for a patch bay with all your insets and things. I miss that. I'd love to have that somehow. Just this a little matrix of buttons that to swap things in and out. But I would say if I had to choose one thing that I miss, and I do this, I don't know if you do this, it's risky, but I quite often go backwards and listen to old work and try and work out what was good, what was bad, and I perpetually fuck myself up by listening to old mixes that we did by hand with no automation on the radar, and it just sounds great. And I'm like, what then? Because we were a band when we did our band, there's 5 of us, and we would stand there with bits of tape, on every channel, and like the bass player would have a ride from here to there on this section. We would stand there and do almost like a performance in. So there was nothing clever going on. There's no SSL record or anything like that. But something about those mixes is just more musical. It's not one of my favorite terms, but it is. And it's cohesive, and it feels like more of a track to me. And I can only imagine that's because continuing with what I said earlier, we had less options. We had 48 channels, but we only had, I think, a distressor and maybe a thermionic culture Phoenix. That was it for outboard. We made everything by moving the mics and retuning the snare. And that guitar part's not very good. Well, let's try 3 different other pedals. We kind of took the sound in, and that's the only thing I can think of. So when we were moved over to here, that was really at the forefront of my mind. Is okay, what? Because it's different for everyone, right? You'll make a record differently to me and to the next guy. But how have I when I say I mean me and Rob, how have we made our best records? And it was when we were more limited in our options. For some reason, we just focus better, and it makes us look into the live room more. Okay, so that snare is really not working. Okay, well, change the snare. Rather than sort of panicking and going and patching things in, we changed the snare. And that's something that we really wanted to do again. And so, I mean, I make it sound like I've got like 3 pre's. I haven't. I've got 16 pies, which I'm sure we'll get into, 2 tweeds, 5 Neves there, and then 8 more tweeds there. So I've got lots of pre's, and they do have a sort of similar sound. But if I was a rich man, Rick, which I'm not, I would buy, I know the pre's that I like now at the age of 44, it's taken me a while, but I would buy a 53 series Neve with 33115s, and then
that's exactly what I was going to bring up.
I'm done.
That was literally my next question. It was like my gotcha, where I was gonna, okay, so now that you've done this and you've pared it all down, and you're saying you're making better, quicker decisions because you have everything pared down now, would you replace it all for a 24 channel 53 series?
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't even think. But here's why. Here's why, right? So, as you know, you and I have discussed the intricacies of sound and tone and pre's many times. I have to my left here 16 pies, which I know we'll talk about again. That I've had now for coming up to 20 odd years. They're patched in 1 to 16 on my board, right? So no matter what happens, if everything's going wrong, I can pull all of my jacks out, and I've got 1 to 16 on the pies. I can make a record with that. There's no EQs on it. However, Rob and I occasionally work at other studios, as most producers do, and we were working in quite a small studio in a place called Brighton, which is by the sea here in the UK. And they had a 53 series with 33115s in it. I think it was 24 channel or something like that. I should point out, we'd have avoided buying 1073s, 1081s, because fucking Neve, everyone's used Neve, so we'll use Pi or whatever, or Vortex Skin, anything to be different, anything to try and sort of stick our heads above. So we went down there, we were working with a great band, like a shoegaze band, almost like Pavement. They're called Beach Tape. And we sat down at the console, we set up as we always do, the same mics, we took a few mics with us. And about halfway through the first day, I looked at Rob and said, sounds good though, doesn't it? He's like, yeah, it does sound good, but wait, we'll get it back to our place and it will sound shit. And I'm like, yeah, that's it, man. That's what's going to happen. So we did the first day, did the second day. And things were easy. Like, we took an SM7 straight into one of the channels and that was the vocal sound. It's like, okay, well, yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed it. But look, man, we'll get back to ours and watch. It won't be anything compared. Fine. So we gave it a couple of days, got back, and we just brought it up with our morning coffees, pressed play on it, and it was there. It was just fucking there. The whole song was not mixed, but so close. And we looked at each other, and there was this moment of like, oh, fucking hell. It's almost annoying because we can't afford it. And now we've heard it. It's like if we'd have never heard it, I wouldn't be sat now and, as you know, chasing the world down for 33115s. But we heard it. And unfortunately, once you've got an ear like you have, if you hear something and you've got a great result and you got it easily, that's what I want these days. And so that's why we've been gathering up these 33115s. But yeah, if you, for Christmas sent me a desk, I'd happily fuck off everything I've just said and sit at it.
No, it's great to hear because, what it comes down to is that, I really don't believe that any workflow is the one way. Do whatever you feel good about whenever you feel good about it, And it's very interesting because you and I have these conversations and I'll get hyped on the idea of doing the things that you have gone and done and then just not do them at all. So I'm with you right there. If someone wants to give me a 53 series for this thing, I would trade it,
Yeah.
So,
but the thing is, Rick, I've been where you are on these conversations. But I live on a tiny island. It's 27 miles across. This thing is fucking small. It's like the size of a city, but 90% of it's fields and horses and, dog shit. There's not a lot going on here. But it turned out that there was actually another producer lived here, a guy called Andy Gray or Andy Grayling. And he did the score for Swordfish. Is that the one where the bomb goes out and it's all sort of 3D? He did the score for that, and he also did the I don't know if you have it in the States, a program called Big Brother. He does, it's like where they put people in a house and they film it. He did the theme tune for that. Okay. And a number of other things. So as you'll probably guess, he had a lot of money from doing those kinds of things, and he bought a 14th century manor house here, which was incredible. And he had, or still has, 50 odd grand or more of vintage synths and and all this stuff. And so we befriended him, of course, because he was a beta tester for Pro Tools, actually, more than anything else. So we got stuff early. But we would go to his and we would sit there, and he had not a very big studio, but every single one of his synths, every single one of his drum mics was in the whole time, plugged in. So he could bring anything up because it's just how he worked. And I would sit there and I would just get perversely into it. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is it, Rob. And we would drive back to our studio, like, yeah, but that's it. Tomorrow, no, we're going to get rid of it. And then we kind of just forget. And then it'd be the next day, and it wouldn't be till the next time we go there, we're like, oh yeah, this is what we want. But I think that he eventually went, I nearly called it the dark side then. That's Freudian. He is now entirely in box, I think, with like 400 monitors. The end of, is it Superman 3 where Richard Pryor's got all of, turns into, he's like that. And I couldn't go that far because I still and as boring and as dinosaur-like as it sounds, I still am very big on taking my sounds into Pro Tools. Rob and I both get 90% of our sound in outboard and take it in. We've slowed down our workflow to do it just by saying, okay, well, let's spend an extra 5 minutes on that and get it in so that when it comes to a mix, because we can't often mix our own productions, you see, which is terrible, I know, but we do. And we're finding that by doing that, we're not having that battle we're not scooping things out that that are just ridiculous and this, that, and the other, because we've taken the time on the way in. This stuff is just mixing easier. I'm not saying we get it right every single time, and we do a lot of work in box, and Rob actually is a lot better in box than me, but it's just been interesting to reduce the amount of stuff we've got, but spend more time with it on the way in, which is where we've kind of ended up. And whatever gets me to that sound that I like faster is a win for me. So the pies, I know they're great. I know what a Space Echo is going to do. I know what the Vortexican preamps are going to do, and I know what my compressors do. But there's something about these Neves that just how I hear things. That's the only way I can explain it. That's when I put a bass guitar through it, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. I mean, this, and a bit of that, but that's kind of what I wanted. And that happens a lot with them. And that's the pre's that, out of everything I found, do that for me the most. So I just want more of them. But they're so rare now. And anyone that has them doesn't want to fucking sell them, because of course they don't. And the desks do come up. Pete Townsend sold one recently, but it was a lot of money. Look at this haircut, man. I haven't got the money to spend on things. It's like, it's not going to happen.
It's very, very interesting to watch you go on this journey where, Neve is now it. And I've got to ask, have you had a chance to go and try 1073s or 1081s? I know you've worked in a bunch of studios, so I'm assuming you've tried them at other places.
Yeah.
Brought in your spot and compared them with the 33115, and is the 33115 it?
Well, that's interesting because, as I said earlier, we avoided Neve for a long time. I don't know why. If you think of Rob and I as kind of the Dungeons and Dragons outcasts of the world, we really are in that world, and so we have this natural thing of going against what anyone else is trying to do. I don't know what it is. It's not healthy, but we do it. So we avoided Neve. But once we had the 33115s, we thought, well, 1073s or 1081s or 1084s, they're all easier to get, it seems, or decent remakes, So we had some in, and they are great. They are great. I would have the 33115s over them, and I think I can explain it. It's a little bit of a story, but I think I can explain it. When we first set up our old studio, this was around the time we had the Mackie desk and just before we had the Audient and the radars and things. If you imagine our studio is right in the middle of a big, lots of storage containers, like storage walls. Imagine that, but with a water tower in the middle. That's it. Insane situation. But we were very friendly with the people that ran it. And one morning or one afternoon, they just knocked on the door like, "Oh, you do music, don't you?" It's like, yeah. But, "Oh, some guy's not paid his bill and he's legged it. So there's all this music stuff if you want it." We're like, "Okay, well, let's come and have a look." And we were expecting, some PVPAs and, some Metal Zone pedals or something like that. But when we got in there was like stood a 1080 and a bunch of Audix stuff and lots of ribbon mics and some nice stuff, man. But older I would say older broadcast stuff. So they just let us have it. It's how we basically started our proper studio. We just emptied this thing, put it into our studio. But for a long period of time, the desk we got out of it was called an Audix MXT 1000, right? So it's a broadcast desk. It's a horrible, shitty brown color, but it has an opto compressor, an LDR, light diode resistor, is it? It has a limiter on every channel, basically. And we had this like 12-channel desk. And we did everything through that for many years. And we got really, really into it. And I think that the reason I like the 33115 so much is that it's nostalgic to me. It reminds me of that. There's something about that broadcast thing and the transformers that are similar, really, that I think has led me down the route of liking these Neves the most. Is the truth of it. There's something. Have you ever listened to mixes that you've done on sort of like some 70s tannoys or something? Even though you know this, you know the sounds really perfectly. When you hear them, there's a softness, and I use the word nostalgia, and I think it's right. A nostalgia to listening to that sort of stuff. It's the same for this broadcast gear. There's something about it that just fits my ears. So the short version is, I'd keep the 33115s if I could, or 33114s. I'm not fussy.
So you're saying that because the 33114s and the 33115s sound more like the BBC and stuff like that to you, that you prefer it over a 1081.
I think that's it. I think that's it, and I can't tell you for why. I'm one of those dudes, and I think you'll probably know what I mean here. Do you remember when, if you typed in vintage recording gear into eBay for years, there was just that dude that would put stuff up with his plants.
The flower guy.
Yeah. So I don't do it anymore as much as I did, but I know you did as well. I was obsessive for a while of getting this stuff and trying things. I mean, over the years, we've tried so much stuff. It's completely vulgar, the amount of gear we've had in and out of here. But I think that the BBC, this is a big generalization here, but the BBC at a certain point, they commissioned some really good gear. They really did. They got some companies to make some really nice stuff, and they did it well. And if you can still find it, some of that stuff is great, man. It's really good. I would sit at a full Audix MXT 1000 desk. I would. They sound great. They really, really do. Things like vocals just sound amazing in it. And all of the transformers can push quite a bit like the Pies, but they're colder and they're tougher. And so that's why I like the Neves, because we don't have faders on our Neves either. We don't have any way of like pulling stuff down afterwards. So we're generally pretty hot going into things because I've refused to pay for a really nice rack to be made until I've got 10. Once I've got 10, then I'll pay for the really nice rack. We're halfway there at the moment.
Okay, and so if you got a really nice rack put together for it and you have 10 of them, at that point, would you consider getting something like the spec audio, the fader thing that he has, where you could come in?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to come across like, I'm against clutter, because I'm not. The studio is a complete mess. If I panned this round, I've tidied this shit up. Everywhere else outside of this is a comedy fucking mess, I promise you. But there's something about doing this for so long, and my old age, if you like, I'm really enjoying sitting at a smaller console and focusing on a bunch of pre's that I really know, and almost starting to worry, because I've worried for 20 years about the wrong things probably. What pre and and all of this and saturation, and do I get a tape or do I push it to tape, and if I do, what tape and what tape machine and all that stuff. And I've kind of I'm approaching the point where I want to sit at 10 Neves with my 16 pies off to the side, and I almost want to just sit at them and really focus on the music and really worry about, why is this song not working? And I know, it's because the chorus is shit. It's not because my undersnare wasn't popping correctly, Jim. Do you know what I mean? And try and look for things within the music to fix, rather than me obsessing about, gear. But it's hard because gear is just sexy, Rick. It's what it comes down to, and I like to spend my damn money on it. It's why I'm so poor. But we've just landed a very nice job doing a score for a cartoon. We do this cartoon. We've just landed 3 more episodes, and that's a good chunk of change for us. And we had this conversation, my brother and I. We got it. Let's say we got it at 12 o'clock. And then we were like, that's great, because we'll put that in the bank, and that means we can pay ourselves X amount till I think it was November next year. We're like, that's great, brilliant. We're like, yeah, all right, good. That's agreed. Firm handshake. And then he has a cup of tea. I fuck around on a few things. And then it couldn't have been 2 o'clock when he went, thing is though, if we just spent a little bit of it on this, and I'm like, well, yeah, well, actually, I've already been Googling. We're terrible. We can't stop ourselves buying gear. We'd already done it, man. But hey, we'll see.
I know how it goes because I traded a rack of Neves for guitars, which I'm currently trading for a microphone to sell to a hip hop artist to buy those tweets from you. So
those ones.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I know. But isn't it funny? And this is a complete sidebar to most things, but anyone that's done it for as long as we have and has run, I don't mean people that have just been producers. I mean people that have run studios and bought and sold and bought pieces of gear to attract clients, I guess, if you like. You do end up having this stupid knowledge of things because you're aware of their value, because you're always doing what, like you've just said there. I'm always thinking, okay, well, I don't need that, but I do. If I got that and I sold it to this guy who would sell it to that guy, then I could get that thing I wanted. And I never intended to be this like reseller of equipment. But over the last 20 years, we must do 1 or 2 deals a month, I would say, just to, whether we're short on the rent or we want that microphone or this, that, and the other. This is a really interesting thing to do. We sometimes do this. If you could imagine a sports hall, a gymnasium, and it's empty, and you just put all of the gear that you've owned, no matter how long, in that gym, what would that look like? Ours is unreal, man. Completely unreal. Think about it. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I'm a bit of an insomniac. I have trouble sleeping. And rather than counting sheep, I will sit there and I'll visually lay out all the stuff we've had over the years. Man, it's scary. It's really scary.
And I don't even like to think about it because like currently I'm like going and buying shittier versions of things that I already own. The prices is skyrocketing, and it's like, well, I always said I'd buy it back. So
yeah.
But that being said, one thing that I definitely want to discuss with you is the pies. You're the person who introduced me to the PYE TvT sound. And, I remember hitting you up and I can't remember which record it was on. But I remember hitting you up and being like, I fucking love this. It's extremely distorted, but very, very colorful and cool way.
I know what it is. I can tell you what the song is if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got a curse of a memory. It's a song by a band called Various Cruelties, and it's a song called "If It Wasn't for You," and it was used on on like a Sears Diamond advert, I think, over in the States. A guy called Liam O'Donnell is the man, but I remember it so very clearly because we discussed initially how I tracked the bass through a Space Echo. Yep. And that went on to talking. Oh, hang on, I'm about to lose power. And that went on to talking about the pre's, and that was the pies. So, but the thing that I've been excited to talk to you about is that I guess really, if there's anyone in the world that can talk about these pies, it's you, me, Rob. Who's your old guy there? Jeremy, was it? That was around for and there's a few other people that have got a spattering, but really. When you want to talk about people that have sat down with, say, more than 3 or 4 of them, there's only a handful of us, man, which is kind of interesting, right? I love that. I really, really like that. So, I mean, I can give you a background on how I got the pies and things, if you like.
Yeah, I would love to hear, your thoughts on how you got them and, how they've progressed in your work, because you've taken them and you've unracked them from their module cases. You've built custom racks for them. You said, this is what I want permanently. This is how I want it to live. I feel like I have, the gym version 1.0 of pies. You've got like gym version 4.0 of pies. So, I even have pies because you remember I bought this rack with it wasn't completely full, the 2 racks, and then I bought a PYE TvT console and then filled this out. So I've got some that were unmodified and some of yours were modified. You know what I mean? So just little thoughts on those things.
Okay. So the pie starts with a really familiar story, and going back to the plant pot guy. have a tendency, I don't drink much anymore, but I did for a while. And I had a tendency to have a couple of drinks with friends. And then before I went to bed, just surf eBay for things, typing in XBBC, into this whatever. And I was doing it one night, and this listing for a Pi console was there, and it was on a farm. It had been found on a farm, almost like a barn, I think. But it was huge. It had been built into a desk, a metal frame desk, and this was the whole thing. It was in Wales. And I was like, God, that is fucking cool. I had no concept of the sound, no concept of anything. And again, this is probably quite Freudian, but it's big knobs. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah. I fucking want that. And rather than being an adult and going, well, I'll do a bit of research, I just bought it. I just bought it there and then. Didn't ask my partner, as in my brother, Rob. Just bought it. And I had to go into work on the Monday. This was like a Friday night, and go, so on Friday night, I've bought a desk. And he's like, oh, right, okay, what desk is that? Well, it's on a farm. It's like almost a ton. And I paid this amount of money for it. And he was supportive, but less than happy, should we say. So we had it brought down on a truck, and we had the actual console part, which, as you know, is not big. It's only this sort of size, taken out of it. And then what happened was I had this Pi console sat in the corner of the room, and I felt kind of guilty. I was like, well, I should get it working. I should, So we found a guy that could work on it. And he got me a couple of channels working. We bought the desk, and I now have a desk that I need to make work to sort of make myself feel less bad. We had a few channels, and at the time we were using Chandler Limited, the Abbey Road channels with the full EQ on it. And we really liked those. I still really like those. But we put them up, we put the Pis up against those. We're like, okay, well, let's just see what, A and B, see what they do. And they were the same. They were as good. And we were like, oh, fuck. Okay, well, if we sold these, as we were talking about, if we sold these Chandler things, we could just get the desk done. So, okay, fine. So we started that process. And at the same time, there's a chap in the UK called Blake Devitt, who's Mr. Neve. And I've been asking around about certain parts and things. And he had another couple of Pi desks. So from having no Pi desks, I all of a sudden had 3. So I had, 30-something channels or whatever it was. And we had them done up in the way that you've got them now, with the original things down the side. And then we always felt like there was something that could be improved, and we weren't sure what it was. We didn't know what it was. We just felt like maybe the headroom could be bigger or something like that. And we found this guy who's, I think he's dead now, actually, who he basically took them apart, kept everything that passed audio, in effect, and upgraded the power supply to them and ramped them up a little bit. And so the Pis that I have now, I have 2 boxes of 8, and they are the same as your Pis, but they have about 10 dB more headroom. That's it, ultimately. But we had them put into a box with phantom, phase, and a 10 dB pad, and that's it. There's no markings on them. I'll send you a picture. There's no markings on them at all. But what has been such a huge turn on for me with the MBEQ is that I've only got a long fader and the gain knob, right? And so when I saw the source with 2, I was just instantly at home. So what's been hilarious, and it is hilarious, is I know. So if I'm putting a 57 into the Pi to put on a snare, I know exactly how much long fader and exactly how much gain I want. I know it to death. I can match that shit on the EQ. That's what's fascinating to me. I can go, okay. And so when we were starting to do some presets and we were trying some things up and down, we didn't have any trouble doing it because we just did what we would do on a Pi. Oh, rooms. Okay, so rooms. So in rooms, I'd like to have quite a lot of sort of saturation. So I'm going to have the gain at, let's say, 1 o'clock, and then I'm going to bring up to taste. you do that on the Source thing, it's the same. It has that same thing. And it kind of fucked us up a little bit, if I'm honest, because we're like, well, okay, that is good. That's really good. Because the things that the things that I love about the pies, and maybe I've jumped ahead here, is that for many, many years, I always assumed that it was germanium, that the gain stage was germanium. And I used to tell everyone, well, actually, what you love, it's the germanium stage. But it's not. They're not germanium. They remind me, Rick, what's before, after Valve, and before? It's a really short-dated piece of technology that I can't think off the top of my head. It'll come to me, and that's what they are. They're not germanium, but
Zener.
Oh yeah, I can't think what it is. It won't go in my brain right now. But it was a really short-lived thing, and that's what the gain stage is. But
they're not silicone. They're not like a 1073, right?
Yeah, they might be a really early silicon type thing. I think there's something like that. But the short version is they're nothing clever, and they're not germanium, which is what I lived off for years telling everyone. But there's something about that stage that, as you know, it's just so special. It's so musical, and it can go everywhere from, revolution guitar sound to big, open, beautiful acoustics. And I've never found that in another pre, really. It's kind of amazing. As far as an all-rounder pre goes, the Pi is just something special. And when I did a record for a band called 7778, and our Pies were away for repair the whole time we did it. And then they tagged one song on to the end of the album. And when it came back, so they came back to do the song and the Pies were back, we tracked that one song through the Pies rather than the desk we had at the time. And it just destroys the rest of the record. It is not comparable. It is tighter and musical, and the low is beautifully low and the high is beautifully high. That's what the Pies are to me. They're just this perfect beast. But I think that what I hoped that your EQs would do in that state, with the Pi stage, it does, and I can't work out how you've done it. I can't work out how it's bravo. If I had a hat, I'd doffed it on. It really has. You've nailed that, sir. You really have. And I would be, as you know, the first to tell you if I didn't think you had. I think it is. It's about the most perfect emulation that I've come across. Only because I know these pre's so well, and man, it's excellent. Really, really excellent. And I'll tell you why it's excellent within the EQ. Because the EQ is such a brilliantly functional EQ. I'm now completely addicted to the frequency finder. I'm addicted to it. I've got an issue where I just do it the whole time. It's wonderful, and just using the EQ is a joy. Let's put that to one side, right? Love all of that, but quite often, if I'm mixing something that I haven't recorded, and I'm like, it needs something. What is it? I would put it out through a Neve. I put it out through the Pi. We found over the last month or so. Last month or so that we've been doing. Just turn it off. We've been doing, instead of bouncing stuff out, we've been using the source within the EQ and getting the same thing that we wanted. And that's what's incredible. Because sometimes you want just that little bit more, that's something, and you don't know what it is, and you can't turn around and tell the band, I don't know what it is. But just dicking about with those two sliders, I'm finding some wonderful sounds out of it, man. And that's what's really exciting to me, that I've got the Pi sat there and I've got a space echo there. But in the same way that I quite often just use the inbox space echo, I wonder how long it is before I use the inbox Pies, and that's that is something to be applauded. You've done a brilliant job, my friend, a really brilliant job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. You know, I've been waiting to have this conversation with you. And so the internet knows we have not discussed this, you know.
No.
I tried to get in touch with you as far as getting it over during beta testing, and it just, you know, we never linked up. You're on the other side of the world and lives are busy. But, you know, I was always very curious. And then I got to the point where, you know, as we grow, we have to believe in the decisions that we make, and we have to believe in what we're hearing. So I got to the point where I was like, it's fucking good. I don't need to send this. Like I want them to hear it after it's done, you know, and we got there. And you know, for Make Believe as a plugin company, you know, we intend to really hopefully take plugin modeling to a place that it hasn't gone before. And there's, you know, that's a bold statement. There's a lot of people who have done tons of plugin modeling, but, you know, Metric Halo's new state space model extraction process that we use to capture the pies for the sauce button inside of MBEQ, as well as a plugin like the Sontec, really does a tremendous job of capturing what truly happens inside of a unit, like both of those units. And they're so wildly different because the pie, as you said, is very, very interesting. And for me, I think about it in the same way as a balancing act, you know? The pie, if you leave the fader wide open and then you start driving it, it can sound incredibly clean. And it's not clean. It's still distorted, but it's distorted in a very musical way. And you get that for what I would consider the majority of input sources that aren't like very loud, you know? But then what happens when you hit it with something like drums are always so loud going into the pies, the way that people are typically playing them nowadays, that they instantly create this distortion. But the way that it distorts is, you know, very, very interesting. And I found some stuff, you know, just the same way that you did, where you say, if we want a different sound, we're going to change the snare drum, you know? And I found, particularly in snare drums, that the Pi did something very interesting if you were using a snare drum that produced a ton of low end before the Pi, you know? And it's not that it distorted the low end, which it does, you know, but it's that the, you know, 100 to 200 hertz range actually really distorts the 3 to 5K range in the pies in a very, very interesting way. And what we found, you know, led us down this path, which what we call is, you know, truly dynamic harmonic distortion, you know, and the Pi exhibits a lot of that. You know, if you distort 100 hertz on the Pi with a big EQ boost before it, it's going to distort the upper mid range in a way that wouldn't happen if you didn't have that EQ there. And, you know, most plugins aren't really looking for those things. So to be able to start with something that is so broad like the Pi, because when you get into the really hard ranges of the Pi, you really start cranking on those things, you know, that preamp will turn things into square waves. You know, it produces over 2% harmonic distortion when it's close to full scale inside of the plugin, you know, and it's very interesting because you and I, as you brought up, we are probably some of the only people who have been able to sit with more than a pair of these things for any given amount of time, you know, and it's very interesting to see people's reaction to it, because when they use it inside of MBEQ, I feel like they're like, oh, it's based on the Pi, but, you know, you turn this thing up and it pretty much turns into Decapitator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And so does the Pies.
Yeah. You can the Pies can be absolutely brutal if you want, in the best way. In the best way. You know, if you want to try something, and we did this when we was mucking around with the presets, is sometimes I did a record under the name Boe Weaver, even though that's our name, and it was a like a psyche kind of rock record, psychedelic rock, but we for the most part had a mono overhead, which I'm a little obsessed with, but I'd say half of the record we have a mono overhead, and then we have what we would call a dick mic. People call it all different things, but it's just the mic that goes over your kick and it points between your snare and your kick at someone's dick, if they're lucky enough to be that big. But we, for years and years, when we do our drum sound, so quite standard drum sound, I would say we do. Since that record, we always have an extra undersnare, that we just have almost fully distorted with the pies. It's a really chaotic beast. But you take it and you take it down, and then you go, okay, yeah, I've got that, and you see your level. Then you turn it off, and then once you're coming to mixing, you can just sort of bring that up to taste, and just slowly, and it might be a few dB, 10 dB or something underneath your snare, and this thing, it just goes big and wide and exciting, and you're like, there's something happening. I don't know what it is, but something is turning me right on about this drum sound. And that's what we love for the pies, and that's what I would suggest that people try with the MBEQ, is just be extreme with it. You don't, if you haven't got many channels, double a channel over, and be really extreme, get some of this harmonic stuff happening, and then sneak up. Man, it does something. It does something really, really great in your room sound. If you've got that, the one thing I hate about studio recordings is when I hear a really lovely room. As in sort of quite perfect. I'm like, that's doing nothing for me. That does not turn me on. I want to hear the bad room. I want to hear, and what we found, and actually one of the presets we did, is we took our room mics and we absolutely destroy them. Get them really hot, clipping, red, everything's steaming, And then we have our normal, so we have at the back of the room, we have like Earthworks mics we've had for years. We have them up that will capture a very beautiful sound of the room. Lovely. But then we'll normally have like some 4038s, some ribbons or something like that, which go really nicely with the pipe. And they're the ones that we'll kill right up there. And then again, like the snare, you just bring that up slowly, and there's something happens. You've got the room and you've got the detail in it if you want, but there's an extra musicality to it, or an extra, I hate the word vibe, but vibe. And that before you know what's happened, you've got your normal drum sound, but there's just something better about it. And that's what I love. That's what I think, that those two faders that you've got on the plugin are able to do that. And that's so exciting, I think. So you can, we've all done it. You're sat there and you've got the band behind you, and the fucking guitarist just keeps using the word tone, even though he doesn't really understand what he means. It's like, the tone's not right. It's like, okay, dude, well, we could try this. It's like, right, okay, no, the tone's not there, and he's not giving you anything. You're sat there and you're trying everything to find this impossible thing. What I found with the slider, the source, is that you can fuck around with something you've already got and start to get these tones, these interesting things. And that's just invaluable, I think. If you're really, you're looking to make something a bit sexier, a bass line is great, but you really want to cook it up for the chorus. Okay, well, double your channel over or automate it and do that. Oh, sorry, I'm inverted, aren't I? Do that, get the gain going up. And then you've got your lovely lift. And that's within the EQ without using, decapitator or some thermionic, or some modulation. It's man, I will use it to fucking death, and that's for sure. And we've already got it as our default EQ. So from the day you sent it, I was like, right, well, I'm going to whack it on. And you've got to remember that Rob and I have to agree on this shit, because you don't want to go in and change it every time. And we left it on for the day where we started to muck around. And how long have I had it now? 2 months, 3 months? It's stayed. It's just there. And you go to any session, it's all over it, man. And that's the biggest kind of kudos I can give you, that I'm using it, because I don't bother with lip service. I'm too old and I'm too English. So I would tell you, if I didn't think it was up to scratch, I probably wouldn't have done it in this forum, but I would have told you. But I wanted to not really talk to you about it, so that I could talk to you like this, and you couldn't be prepared for me to say nice things at you. Because it's
I'm not used to it. No. Thank you. It's a nice surprise. This is just amazing to hear, and I really, really appreciate you spending some time with MBEQ. We do this thing when we're doing these podcasts. We've only done it a couple times now. That you're actually our fourth one that we filmed. We haven't really, except for Anthony Maldonado's, but we call it the top 5, which is all of us have wonderful outboard gear. But if people want to be more like Jim and Rob in the box, what is the top 5? And the first thing is, what's your number one equalizer in the box? And be honest, if it's not MBEQ, you don't have to say it. I know you said it's default, but
see, I probably would have, up until now, I probably was stuck in Fab Filter World, because it was just easy. But now, and this sounds like I'm blowing smoke right up your ass, but it would be the MBEQ. That's what I would use now, because it's already become second nature to me. The shortcuts, the key commands, all of that, and it just. Do you know what I like about it, Rick? It feels like someone that has spent a lot of time EQing things has made it. do you know what I mean? It does the things that I want it to do. It's, you know how sort of Jonathan Little, what's his company, Little Labs, make stuff that is not necessarily sort of very sexy, but everyone that actually really records music will go, oh yeah, that's a cool thing. I feel like that's what you've done with this EQ. You've sort of, is there such a thing as a future classic in plugins? I don't know, but I would say the MBEQ. That's my short answer.
Okay. The next thing is your number one compressor in the box.
So this is tying in wonderfully, because I generally I compress on my way in. I should put my hands up, but not always. If I'm looking for a compressor that I know to death and I throw it on, it's the old school Waves Pi compressor. That's what I use. I used it because I thought it's funny, because we had Pis. And then over the years, I haven't had a drum bus in 15 years. I haven't had it on. And all I do, if I'm honest with you, I just tickle it. Just a little bit of, and that is enough for me. I don't know, what would Rob say? I don't know. I'm a secret fan of the germanium, is it Soft Tube Do It? You know, the Chandler's one. It's their germanium compressor, isn't it?
Yeah, the blue one.
Yeah, the blue. Yeah. And there's a setting on there that's called like special drum fattener or something. And I think it's mucking around with the phase. I do like that, but I would say that and I think anyone that wants to get into recording the sort of music that we do, try that Pi compressor, man. It's only got drum presets for some reason, but I use it on lots of things, bass and guitar. It does the things that I want, for sure.
Amazing. So, next up is number 3, and that is your go-to limiter in the box.
So I use, for the last year and a half, I would say, and I use it quite wrong. I'm going to have to turn it. It's the Soft Tube mastering limiter is what I use. What's it called? Yeah, so I use the Vice compressor limiter, or how you would say that. And I basically have got so used to it that I sneak it on things that have got no business being limited. I just, I'll have it on a hi-hat, or I'll have it on, things like that. For me, it is, if I'm gentle with it, I don't hear it. I'm not a big fan of hearing limiting. I love what it does, and I love it within a mix, but I don't like to hear it. So that for me, I've used that for the last year and a half or so. Although I've got to tell you, fucking Kevin's, your limiter's good as well, man. What's it doing? You're not going to tell me, are you? It's got like a mid thing, right? Kevin's limiter's got like a mid thing to it. And look,
so Kevin's limiter is based on a preset that was created for the Mia limiter inside of Metric Halo. It's interesting because the way that the preset is set up is not the cleanest way to set up that limiter. As far as the release time, it's one of those things where it generates its own sound, which you're hearing as, maybe this mid-range presence. And I'm not going to say that it's distortion, because it really depends on how hard you drive it on whether you're going to distort it or not. But it's a colorful limiter that I really, really appreciate. And that is just based on the time constraints that they came up with.
I use it on anywhere where I would reach for like an 1176. I've been really enjoying it. Bass, things like that. I'm perpetually, and it's because of my long-term sort of hearing issues, I'm perpetually chasing presence. I'm like a 3K slut. I'm completely addicted to that. And so anything that kind of just leans something a little bit forward for me is a plus. We've actually just got rid of them, but we had Poltex here, and I was obsessed with the trick of threes, where you boost three at three like that. And Kevin's limiter is doing something that I like in the mids, for sure. I know you're not going to tell me, but I love that I don't know, because the one thing I wanted to say to you is that all of our pies and a lot of the gear that we've had made doesn't have any markings on it. There's no markings because I don't want to be lazy. And so every time I go back to the plies, I know roughly where I am, but there's no marks at all. And I kind of like having to shut my eyes and use my ears. And there's something about that and good math that works for me. It's actually, I'm not calling you a genius, but it's a brilliant move to make something that is in box that you don't look at. Love that.
I feel good about it. I'll say this has been polarizing, but we're very, very proud of the plugins. And, I don't know if you've had a chance to, mess around with any of the parallel plugins, but, that's a perfect example of just turning something up and feeling good about it. Either use it or don't.
And sometimes it can be that simple, right? We don't have to be knee deep in pages of instruction manuals. I want to sometimes just try something and for it to be better and go, cool. And I'm on to the next one. I love that. And I've got to tell you, the more times I'm just dumping Kevin's Linter or good maths on stuff, things sound better. So that's a win, right? That's an endorsement right there. Just put it on, it sounds better. It's a T-shirt. Fuck's sake, it's great.
That's how I feel about it. So the next one down the list is your number one reverb in the box.
For many years we had, we only got rid of it quite recently, a stereo plate, an EMT plate, the tranny plate. And I have got very used to the sound of a plate reverb and the music that we do. It's very relevant a lot of the time. Before we got rid of it, we had it in the center of our live room and we tested a load of plates in box plates to see what was close. And not many things were close because there's a certain way, and again, you'll know this, that a sound hits a plate. It hits in and it disperses afterwards. There's a micro sort of bap, like this as you hear it disperse across the metal. And you don't get that in plugins. No one's got that quite right, I don't think. So we use I guess it's the UAD EMT plate, but we mess with it heavily. We've got a series of plugins that we put before and after it to make it sound more like a plate to me, which I'm happy to tell you is a little bit of pre-delay. And then there is some kind of a very gentle distortion at the low, sort of 300-400, like that. And then I roll off everything over about 13, 14. That sounds like a plate reverb to me. And that's what I use.
Okay.
I'm so complicated. I don't know why I could have just said Valhalla, but that's the truth. We muck around with the
No. That's what we want to hear. And, it's very interesting that you say that because I've done a lot of experimenting with the UAD 140 as well.
Yeah.
And the thing that really opened my eyes was actually a comment that was made by, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but Mick Gazowski, I believe is his last name. The dude who mixed Daft Punk's Random Access Memories and Chuck and a bunch of stuff like that. He brought up using the UAD plugin, but using two models. So, at two models to make up a stereo plate. So use A and B and then send to it with one send and then pan them hard left and right.
That's interesting.
And when I did that, I was like, oh shit, which is very interesting because that's not even how a stereo plate operates. A stereo plate just has two pickups on it, and two transducers but it definitely brought it home for me. And, I also know what you're talking about with the little pop, that when you feed into the actual transducer that happens on a plate. I have more experience with the echo plates that were made by Jim Cunningham, I believe is his name, than I do with the EMTs. We had an echo plate at one of the studios that I worked at, the big, long 7-foot one, and it had even more of a pop to it. And what I found to help is just a little bit of a transient designer right before it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So take that for what it is. But I'm a big fan of that UAD 1.8 one as well. So the last one on the list is your favorite delay in the box.
Well, I could be really general and just say the Sound Toys one. But do you know what? Have you ever tried they're quite old now, the old Moog ones, the Mooga Fuga one?
From Bombay.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I get, because to be honest with you, I print a lot of tape delays on the way in. I generally, like I said earlier, I generally tape delays and stuff in. So we've got like a couple of Watkins and the Space Echo and things like that. But there's something about that Mood Fuga one that is modeled quite well, and they've got the kind of lo-finess of it just about right, I think. It sounds like how I expect like a DM2 with a bucket chip in it or something like that. It sounds like that. And most of the time, I'm honest, I'm not going for kind of posh, bright, glassy ping pong type delays. I'm looking for that kind of gritty thing. So that generally works for me. And or I'll do the same as everybody else and just put sound toys on and just go through the presets till something sounds good. I've done it. I do it. But just I'm my trick with delay inbox and outbox is to, like you said, with the plate. I find that two different delays set as close as you can do something really interesting. So we've been known to do that, which is have like this, say the Space Echo delay on, and then match it with another delay and get it as close as you can. Not to the click. I don't like delays to the BPM, but then get them kind of close, and that does something really interesting. Again, because you've got two things that are nearly there but not, and there's a phasey thing that happens, and it just sounds musical and interesting. I'm always trying to get human into things. That's slightly wrong, and that's what makes it sound great, you know. And I think just having something slightly what we would call wonky here in the UK, slightly wonky is great. It perks up the ear. Can't have things too perfect. There's something about that just is laborious to me to listen to. I don't want to hear that perfect delay the whole way through a chorus. I'd like it to move around a little bit, you know.
No, totally.
That's just me. Yeah.
Oh, I totally get it. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
If I want a perfect delay, I'll use H delay. Besides that, I'm usually trying to distort my delays.
Yeah, for sure.
I just got another warning that we're running out of time again.
Sorry, that's my fault, man. It's my fault.
No, I really appreciate the conversation, and this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's been a pleasure, Rick. I've been really, really looking forward to speaking to you. I know we've spoken lots in the past, but it's just lovely to speak in this way, you know. Me and Rob follow everything you do. We're making sure that we keep on it, you know.
Oh man, thank you so much for saying that. And I've been looking forward to this as well, to the point where the other day I was like, I got to get my hair done. I can't.
Yeah.
But we should, we got to keep this conversation going, and I'd love to have you back on here and just, of course we're going to keep in touch because we have forever. But my home is your home, and if you ever need anything, please just say the word.
Thank you so much, man, and vice versa. If you ever want to come to a very small island and make distorted music.
Yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day, and
too, man.
I will talk to you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Rick. Take care, brother. Bye, man.